Radio, CIUT 89.5, the sound of your city.
Scano Swagwego. That means hello everyone. Iswatundage. You are all listening to CIUT Wadranota. You're listening to CIUT Radio 89.5 Niganjo. It is placed at the frequency of 89.5.
Sometimes things get rough, sometimes tough. Must be more to life than this. Standing on the sidelines, waiting for the highlights, yeah. Must be more to life than this.
Danse Waje Anin Sego Kwe. You are tuned to CIUT 89.5 FM. This is Indigenous Waves. We are live on the air after 18 months. It's so good to be here. My name is Jenny Blackbird.
And I am Jennifer Sylvester.
Woo! Yes.
Ooh.
And it's good to be here. It's good to be in studio. We just heard Adrian Sutherland. They released a new album, and that was Magic Hits. So, way to go! I just love hearing new music, and Adrian's always knocking it out of the park. So, just a quick. We are broadcasting live right now, in studio from Dish with One Spoon territory. Se wato guatsara. It feels good. So what have you been up to, Jennifer? Just real quickly before we introduce our guests.
Bunkering down in my apartment with my family, trying not to get COVID, along with everybody else, pretty much the last 18 months. Along with continuing with doing my PhD. I'm in my third year now, and just doing the best I can, as we all are.
That's awesome. Yeah, same. Trying not to get the sickness, but thankful for everything I have, and I'm really glad. So tonight we have a very special show. I mean, other than being the first show back, but we have some guests from X University. So we have Jeremy Caribou and Sam Howden, and Jeremy, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Jeremy Caribou. I'm from Puckawagan, also known as the Matthias Colomb Cree Nation, situated on the Mississippi, now Churchill River in northwestern Manitoba. I am half Cree and Mohawk, so I am told. If not, I may just be something else, and have been influenced by my native parents, commonly known as Cree, who were residential school survivors. I am in my final year in my program, and once completed, I will have my Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and Governance.
Awesome.
And you gonna introduce yourself too? Oh, hold on. Try again. No. Okay, one moment. Give us a moment. Technical difficulty. 1 second.
Hello? Hello? Okay. All right, here we are. My name is Sam Howden. I'm from Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm Red River Métis. I am currently studying at X University my Master's of Social Work, and with my focus on food sovereignty and food security issues for Indigenous based foodways.
Awesome. So we're here to talk about activism and social justice. So my first question, open to both of you, is it's about activism.
We do some of that sometimes. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
type of activisms have you gotten involved in the past, specifically since arriving on campus? This question is open to for both of you.
I can't see you, Jeremy, right now, but I'm just gonna pop right in there.
Go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think that, here's the thing. Inherently being an Indigenous person, I feel like you have to have activism on your plate, unfortunately, because it's part of that whole, having to be resistance because of the space of this world, understanding that there is always something that we have to deal with in terms of some kind of, intersectional oppression. But when it comes to activism, it's something that you take up, and I feel like it is because of a responsibility. It's in the nature of fighting for what you believe in, and since getting onto the X University campus, I mean, that I've always been involved in activism, whether it be like in different spaces in my life, even before presently at this institution. But it took the form of, working with student unions, working within on the ground spaces, behind the scenes, like on the, many different ways, like whether it be understanding, the mechanisms of how to get, the attention of what you need, and just being loud enough for people, I guess, to hear you until they want to stop listening.
Awesome. So Jeremy?
And for myself, I agree with Sam because born indigenous is a political act in itself, and I have always cheered for the underdogs, and recently I've participated in walks and protests such as the Indigenous Peoples Walk in Washington D.C. Participated in a failed unionization attempt in the last non-union company I worked for, and have engaged with organizations and developed placemaking principles for facilities at X University, and designed presentations for various departments, which explores colonialisms and its impacts, such as how anti-indigenous racism has developed from my own indigenous sociological perspective, and how historical legislation such as Indian policy restricted us to small tracts of land, which prevented us from experiencing the same socio-political benefits provided to our counterparts on indigenous lands.
I think too, like just to expand on the idea of like activism in and of itself, is that it's taking place on many different fronts, and like sometimes it is an active participation, but sometimes it is a very subversive kind of act that you are, dancing with in these institutional spaces. So sometimes you are weaving in and out of committees or on boards or on other things. And I feel like as Indigenous people, like we're constantly volunteering our time just to make sure that anybody's voice is being heard, because at a minimum, 1% of the representation of the population of a university is not enough for folks to hear where we're coming from. And also like taking that also with a grain of salt, because you can't be in a room and be the pan-indigenous person, you know what I mean? It's like you're constantly coming from it from your own perspectives in your own nation, and not everyone's going to agree with you ever, but at the same time you're like, at a base, I'm really hoping that maybe you'll hear the same message that we've been saying for such a long time.
Totally. So you both sort of touched about how just being indigenous, like Jeremy addressed, that's activism in itself. Like just the whole existence, being born, is an act of resistance. Yes, thank you. In general, like since becoming a student, as we grow up, we become more socially aware, and especially when it comes to being more socially aware of social justice issues as we become students. Was there one specific thing or a series of events that wanted you to sort of just get out there and be more present in activism within the community or just in society as a whole?
It's hard as like a genesis, just because like I feel like I don't know whether it's just the fact that like you recognize something that is like there's an injustice and you just feel it in your chest, and you can tell that something is like, even when you're a child, like something is going on and you're like, I don't agree with that. That doesn't seem fair. And like I don't exactly know like the moment for me where I was like, yeah, but I always remember like in school and stuff, like standing up for people and like feeling a certain way, and then people would just like kind of push my buttons because they like seeing how reactionary I was. Except like that reactionary nature of mine, it's like finally like I felt like was harnessed later on in my life, like somewhere in like my 20s, and then like now getting into my 30s, like finally really understanding like how do I bring this into an organizational framework and like bring people together, so that like we can do this, like, and it's sustainable. Like one person is not a movement, and people come in and out of movements at different times, and sometimes we like need to sit back and like sleep a bit and then wake up and do it again, or like maybe it takes us in another direction. And so like for right now, like for Jeremy and myself, our most active thing has been working on the framework of the institution, like at X University, exposing the truth and the nature of that person's name, their legacy, and what we have to, what we're trying to build towards in a landscape where it's not a very friendly place for many different folks, right? It's not meant for everyone.
Jeremy?
Yeah, for myself, prior to me coming back to school, I experienced anti-Indigenous racism, systemic racism, earlier on in my experiences with institutions. And the reason I got into activism was primarily the systemic experiences I've had throughout my lifetime, such as being in the same company with a promising future going nowhere for years. And you've also heard of Brian Sinclair, the Indigenous gentleman who was ignored to death at the Health Science Center in Winnipeg for a diabetes checkup in 2008. Well, something similar nearly happened to me when a 911 operator decided to view my life as insignificant and refused to send emergency medical services. I nearly died and had to make up a story I was committing a crime for them to send someone, which were the cops first, and only when the police seen me in my situation, lying in my own pool of blood, they called the ambulance. Unfortunately, that is the only way my life was spared that night. Or also, too, I was also refused access to education in Brandon because I was a minor not living with my parents, despite them signing waivers. And I've also worked on the road where, I travel a lot for work, and some of the guys would usually do grocery trips intended for individuals to shop for groceries for themselves. And when I would go with them, I would casually say to them when walking towards the doors, grab anything you want, it's on me, because all eyes on deck will be literally on me. And we would all start laughing collectively, right? Or and I would just think nothing of it, or constantly being followed when shopping, or being called hunter-gatherers, or we don't pay taxes and we speak to animals, which are all narrow-minded, inaccurate perceptions of Indigenous peoples.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I don't think we'll understand just how often it happens for Indigenous people to get followed. Like, for me, it's a constant thing.
Yeah.
And Jenny, our co-host, has experienced that too. And yeah.
That happened last week. I went to a very popular store that many people go to that recently had a big campaign to celebrate Indigenous people. Right? So I intentionally went into popular store to inquire about Cheekbone Beauty because they are connected to popular store now, which is great. But upon walking into popular store, security guard was about 7-8 feet away from me the whole time. And so I am putting lipstick on my hand thinking, I want to buy this, but now I don't want to because this person is staring me down. Mm-hmm. So I went to the other security guard and said, Did you know about the Indigenous beauty brand? Did you know about Cheekbone Beauty? And they were like, oh, I had no idea. And then I left, and then I posted on Facebook and said, yeah, I felt completely uncomfortable, and this is what many of us deal with every day.
Yeah. And surveillance.
And I had the best comments back. A lot of people are like, oh, I used to hand the security guard my basket and then bring them down the aisle and throw stuff in the basket. And then they would draw the line when they get to the panty liners. And then the security guard is like, okay, I can't go down here.
It happens all the time.
Right. And it goes to show that people really need to get rid of their bias. And Canada has and the educational system has done such a great job on teaching everyone that we are this, that, and the other, and they're not paying attention to the brilliant people that we are.
It's like it was originally, well, for us Indigenous peoples, it was originally designed to erase Indigenous identity, culture, and history, which has, from my view, transformed and mutated to the functional superstructure it currently is, which doesn't explore the land degradation development creates, or the social and the social issues, or even Indigenous peoples, which the curriculum has literally transformed us into foreigners within our own landscapes.
Yeah.
And also,
and
like-
and something to come back to to the story, going to the store, is it normal for indigenous peoples to pray to be on good behavior when going to the store because of all the ignorance that we experience? You could be dressed to the nines or a lawyer, and if you're indigenous, you're still going to be followed around.
It's because Jenny and I, when we go shopping, time that we've gone shopping, when we have our purchases in our hands, we do the honor hold it up. There's no we're walking around the store holding it in the air, we're not stealing. This is what we're gonna purchase this. Trust us.
And
Hey, creator, I'm just buying some nail polish. What's
Yeah.
up?
right? We danced down the aisle once with toilet paper because they were following us, and I said, "All right, I'm just going to be as silly as I can." And I'm really hoping that a security guard had that on tape and laughs at it and kind of goes, "Okay, they're being funny. They didn't steal anything." So I had a question here. We got about 9 minutes to kind of talk about this, but so as people from differing indigenous nations, we may have various teachings that inform our worldview and the ways that we speak, listen, and go about our day-to-day business. Like some people use the 7 grandparent teachings, or there may be other teachings that everybody has a different lodge or a longhouse teachings, and then some people even look at other forms of mindfulness, is what I'm about to say kind, is it necessary, that kind of self-reflective work. So what teachings or processes do you reflect on in your work to ensure that you are speaking and acting in ways that reflect indigenous worldviews or teachings? I know it's a lot. Just chew on it for a bit, but
Well, I recently participated in ceremony this past summer, and to answer a question, I only wish that I knew that knowledge when I was younger. I'm just disappointed I didn't know. So, what I learned is in Nadu or TH Cree dialect. We always have to consider the concepts of Witsihituk and Sagihituk, which means Witsihituk means to help each other, and Sagihituk means to care or love one another. Mm-hmm. So that's what I have been thinking about a lot lately.
I mean, one of the things that I hold and often try and think about is just allowing people who are kind of informing folks who are in my space how time is just a very difficult thing for me, just in terms of a construct, because it's so much around the feelings and spirit, and doing it from a different way, and noticing in these academic environments especially that we're so very much in the ladder of our brains, and that really disconnects us from the rest of us, and that in and of itself is just really disorienting and fracturing, and feels very similar to how our landscapes are manufactured in this kind of colonial environment, right? It's well, I can't just be in a green space. I have to go to a park, I can't just be outside in a particular way. There's an allotted space for that, and it does feel really fracturing in that way. So I try to bring in, a holistic kind of mentality when sitting into these rooms, and just really making sure that myself and my cohort are taking care of parts of all aspects of ourselves.
Because you don't want to get burnt out.
Oh my gosh, no! Aren't we there? Where are we? Am I just I'm way past burnout? Am I ashes?
Yeah, we're all just vapor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I've cycled back in, I think.
yeah, and then through some of the research that I've been doing, I learned that being disconnected from land for long periods of time has negative spiritual and physical consequences to your overall health and well-being. So, and it also suggests that being connected to land promotes overall mental health and well-being. So,
indigenous culture is like the land is essential to our ways of knowing and being, and that disconnection from land doesn't help revitalizing our own identities as indigenous peoples.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we were talking about in the elevator how the syllabic writing system, and you were saying how you see it in nature.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
So
It's
when-
like literally written in the land and the universe. It's
It's-
like written on the land and like in star constellations.
and that's so rich, and hearing that it just resonated because I learned how to read and write syllabics, and I just need more like dialogue. I need to learn more of these words and these beautiful meanings behind the words, because our languages are so full and rich, and you can say so much with just one word. Like
Yeah.
it's
We
great.
bring our languages bring things to life, literally.
Yeah, tap way.
Tap women, tap women.
Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes. We gotta go to station ID, but I thought I would drop a track by Leanne. Let's see if I can say this. Batasimosek Simpson. I Pity the Country, because that's like a classic Willie Dunn song, and there's such a great message in the song to begin with, and then the work that Leanne does in poetry, spoken word, and just language. So
good.
yeah, so we'll go to that, and then we'll come back and have a little bit more discussion. So this is Jenny Blackbird on Indigenous Waves on CIUT 89.5 FM. We have Jennifer Sylvester in studio live, and Jeremy Caribou and Sam Howden. So we will be back after we play this awesome track by Leanne Simpson.
Toronto.
Scano Swagwego. That means hello everyone. Iswatundage. You are all listening to CIUT Wadranota. You're listening to CIUT Radio 89.5 Niganjo. It is placed at the frequency of 89.5.
All right, so hey, we're back in studio. This is Jenny Blackbird for Indigenous Waves.
And I am Jennifer Sylvester.
And that was a station ID I haven't heard in a while. The amazing buttered tones of Amos Key Jr.
That's what I was just thinking that too. I was like, I haven't heard that in forever.
Right. So we're back live on air in studio with Jeremy Caribou and Sam Howden from X University. So we've just been talking a little bit about social justice, activism, Indigenous experiences, you know, getting followed in stores, things like that. And so is there anything else you wanted to ask Jennifer before we get into this last question here?
I guess, well, this week is National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So I guess we can't really have this conversation without addressing that. I guess what I want to say, like, how does that tie into, like, how does truth and reconciliation tie into the whole realm of social justice? So I'd like to hear your insight, both of you, on your insight on this. Do they correlate? Do they not? If so, why not? If they so, how? And if not, why not?
Yeah, that's a great question. Jeremy, do you want to pop in or do you want me to?
You can
Okay. Yeah.
answer this first.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been humming and hawing over this a little bit this week because, you know, forever and a day as Indigenous people, we've been, you know, looking at September 30th as like Orange Shirt Day, and now it's the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and we've expanded it into a whole week. And I was talking to my mom who teaches back home and is non-Indigenous, but you know, is a good co-conspirator back there, and she was like, oh yeah, it's a whole week now. And I was like, that's exhausting. That is so traumatizing to think of. Like, even as, like, you know, I've been talking about this a lot with folks in my life. Like, our lived experience should allow us to opt out sometimes. And I'm really, really, really concerned with how, you know, the whole, like, federal holiday of this entire day has been taken up, and it's not being taken up provincially. It's not being taken up by other companies or other institutions. And that we're not recognizing that this day in and of itself, like, is something that we just need to take a step back, and that some folks need to do, you know, personal work around and inspection, and look at their privilege and look at their location and look at their subject position to this, and not, you know, just purely operate out of like white settler guilt. They really, really need to dig deep. And then the rest of us just need kind of a break. Like, we just kind of need a break, and more so just from the fact that, like, imagine if you were hearing about members of your community or relatives that were going across the country in numbers, and not how everyone is not triggered by numbers now. Like, I can't even look at my phone thinking, like, you know, every time that you think of a community, you're now thinking of a number, and this thing cycles through my brain. Yet, you know, the average person can go on in their day and they're just not necessarily thinking that way. And, like, even the color orange, I started to go into such deep thought about the color orange. Of course, it's associated with such a beautiful story of like Phyllis and her, you know, her orange shirt and everything. But at the same time, I was like, isn't this such a color of trickery? Because it's also the color that is the color of incarceration. And it really, really, really impacts us in terms of like how many people in our communities are surveilled, prison to pipeline, incarcerated. And I'm like, there's something about this that like does just, there's things about it that just don't resonate well with me. And then a friend of mine was talking the other day, and they were like, you know, I saw these girls from my high school, and all these like very like, you know, white women, like putting on these like orange shirts and posing cute for Instagram. And I was like, how are you sexualizing like a murderous awful stolen colonial construct, and thinking that like this performative allyship, that's what I'm seeing a lot, and I have been seeing a lot ever since the stuff with X University started to happen. There are some folks who are genuinely coming to the table, coming to the conversation, are super compassionate, and are just trying to find where they fit into the conversation or how they can just be supportive. And then there are other folks who are just using it as another black square or an orange square on their social media and kind of just like throwing down in that way and not really doing any of the work. And then there are folks who are just blatantly racist who just pop in and then you're just like, can you just please, like, for a day, like, just go to bed? So like my feelings around it are really complicated, because we as Indigenous people and community members are always trying to look after one another and also like educate. And I'm feeling that education fatigue. I'm feeling that emotional labor exhaustion, and that like, but we're still doing it because it's like, of course we are. It's part of our responsibility, you know? If I wasn't doing this, I'd be throwing that anger internally, and that's just not a good thing either. So.
Jeremy?
Well, how does reconciliation tie into social justice? Well, for Indigenous people, as of lately, reconciliation has been wrapping itself around social justice with the capital W, and which has there has been some small incremental change, positive change for Indigenous people, such as like the Michigan Murdered Indigenous Woman Report and the RCAP and all these other reports for the last 30 years. But this is not to say that Indigenous people were they've always been fighting for justice since contact, because we've been experiencing like oppression since contact, primarily for lands and resources. And at the moment, reconciliation and isn't agreeing with social justice because of capitalism and profits. Yeah.
I just don't think people are ready, and there's no relationship there. Like there's barely any understanding of like what treaties happen here, who the people are that are here, what languages they speak, how it varies in terms of like just like region by region. That like they don't understand that there's like such relationality, like just down to the point of the land and the people, that like if you don't understand the ways in which we go about Indigenous people having our relationships, how are you going to enter into this conversation in a way that will be respectful? And will even work towards reconciliation. Like that's why I think that, you know, so often we hear from community members being like, no, we're at truth. We're still at truth. And we may stay in truth for a very long time. And perhaps like person by person, moment by moment, you start to make those small acts between, you know, in a micro meso way of working towards something which may one day look like reconciling. But I think we need to go beyond reconciling. Why is it just okay that we're settling on reconciling? Like, why aren't we actually just trying to have loving, supportive, wonderful, like recalibrated relationships where we're not being abused and gaslit?
It has a lot to do with capitalism, or what I like to call colonialism, because it disconnects people's realities, right? Like people don't realize that everybody's been assimilated. Like the Romans assimilated the British, and then the British re-assimilated the Romans, and then they started assimilating everybody, right? So yeah, reconciliation and social justice, that's the goal of justice.
Yeah, and so I personally always think it's about relationships, and if you don't have a relationship with somebody, you don't understand them, they don't understand you, and there are so many fractured fake relationships.
Yes.
And you know, do you ever meet somebody who you think, ooh, I don't jive with them at all, and you really like go on like kind of low-key hating them, and you're like, ooh, gross, and then you realize that they're doing really awesome things, and you kind of like all of the sudden you get to know them, and then you realize, oh wait, They're just like me. And so even your relationship with yourself, you have to really think about, why do I want to do this work? Why do I want to be involved with this? And then for non-Indigenous folks, it's about, I always ask them why. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to wear the orange shirt? What are you going to accomplish? And what are the steps you're going to take to yell at your racist uncle and tell them, no, you're wrong?
It has something to do with education too, because it disconnects people's relationships with basically with each other, because it functions to prepare the individual to become highly competitive in transactional markets
Well, and I think that's also why,
or
like,
consumerism.
Yeah, and I think that's also why, like, more often than not, we see Black and Indigenous people getting attacked for the ways in which we do things, because we operate from a point of community, and we operate from a point of understanding that we're doing this as a collective group, and that is a threat to individualism. That is a threat to white ideology, right? So, I mean, when you start to grade those aspects of, like, how we come together and how we come to know and how we operate, of course you would want to, take that principle and really, really, really start to wear away at that from every point of impact that you can: the land, the people, the culture, celebrations, food, anything that you can think of, in order to, gain more and more control over the situation.
It functions so good, like even our literature is viewed as fiction or fake or folklore, whereas Western literature is often viewed as like nonfiction or as valid knowledge.
And just to tack back to what you said earlier, Sam, about how we're still in the truth, because there's conversations where I had as an instructor or as a person out in the community that speaks out in the community. There's things where I said, like, you've had truth, and we've had reconciliation, and then we've been post-reconciliation. So I think this past summer's put us back to a truth and a reconciliation and post-reconciliation. So I think this TRCP, truth, reconciliation, and post-reconciliation kind of things is coming in waves as more truths are being released.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what... I think that's the conversation, because I find, like, more truths that are sort of coming out. It's important that there's a reconciliation, there's the reactive to truth.
Yes.
And it's a matter of, does it move, does it make changes to create this thing, or which puts us into a post-reconciliation, or does it bring us back to another truth that sort of brings back to us to the same narrative?
This is just my perspective. From my view, I think like all these reports, like we have reports after reports, commissions after commissions with over 1,000 recommendations, which will create some attention or some even friction for like a week or so, and then they'll just get tossed to a bookshelf and to collect dust after a week or two. But from my view, I just think a good marketing strategy which promotes these reports will be will assist in like reconciling relationships, so to speak. Right? Like when you don't have a good marketing strategy, you're not gonna sell whatever you're selling, right?
I just think that it's so unfortunate that we have to market ourselves as being decent enough to be treated as human beings, if that's the case. Like, that it seems like enough that, like, that a committee comes together for a short period of time, debates what aspects of our humanity they should, give into and then not give into, or take note of and actually capture the facts accurately. And then turn around and then, that thing needs to become a living document. It cannot just gather dust. The problem is that we have evidence in all of these documents that have been sitting there on those shelves and piles upon piles of them that exist that no one is bringing back to life. And I
Yeah.
think maybe that kind of, for me, is talking about that truth post reconciliation relationship, is that like maybe people are just paying attention, like at certain points in time, like we're getting more information coming out across the country about the unfortunate nature of like where you know our relatives are and you know are coming back to us in a certain way. And you know, interestingly enough, it's at a time where the planet is also like really going through transformations, as well as the people on this planet going through, you know, this great sickness. So it's like, to me, it's not a coincidence. I feel like it's very much a call to, and it is in my mind like a very much a call to action for us to all pay attention in a number of different ways and to really step up. That it's like, yeah, we have a relationship to activism because we have to, but also everyone has a relationship to activism. It's just whether or not they want to take on those banners and that type of, you know, understanding of human rights and social justice.
Yeah, speaking of action, that's another thing that is missing from all those reports and commissions are action plans or implementation mechanisms.
Right. Talk minus action equals 0. Yes. Kagego.
Isn't it just like
It
kindling at
it
that
appears
point?
that
Isn't that just a
like
fire
they're doing
starter?
something.
It's just the thought of lighting a match.
It's a
Yeah.
check a box.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just wanted to step in and I'm gonna really quickly play this honor song. It will and it's on YouTube. I saw on Twitter there was this thread about honoring the you know the children that never came home. So Sekwepmik honor song, and it's just a minute and 32 seconds. And someone had tweeted that they're gonna sound their drums and sing this, but they also want people to learn it. So if we can, you know, take a minute and think about everybody, all our families and all our friends and our loved ones, and then we'll come back and ask one more question and wrap up the show. But I heard this song and I thought it was so gorgeous, and let's just give it a listen here. Just So that was just a little break. I'm going to retweet that out on the Indigenous Waves Twitter. If you're not following us yet, at Indigenous Waves. And
That's for sure.
yeah, and I just thought that was such a gorgeous little song there. And as a hand drummer, I connect with certain songs and go, oh yeah, that's something I'd love to share, you know, learn and share and put that intention out. So with that being said, my last question. Anything that we say on air, obviously on the radio, it resonates. So we actually were going to entitle this show Resonations, as in like res, right? Resonations.
That's so good.
Right? So anything we say on air resonates out into the universe, as do our prayers and anything we say with intention. So often activism work involves getting a message out to the masses in an impactful and often succinct manner, in, you know, using acronyms or MMIWG2S, water is life, you know, kind of like those slogans, diet reconciliation, you know. What do you think are the most impactful ways of relaying a message or informing others of your social justice and activism work. So that could be visual art, spoken or written words, speeches, mnemonic devices such as a wampum or petroglyphs or pictographs or any kind of imagery or whatever it might be. Like what are some of the things that you use in your work?
Well, I could, if you don't mind me going first.
Oh yeah, please.
Some of the things that I use in my work are well, let me explain. When I first came to the institution or ex-university, aka Ryerson University, aka Ryerson Polytechnic, aka the Normal School, and other bunch of names. But anyways, when I first started my relationships with various departments at the institution, I started researching placemaking principles for facilities management development in the project management office at the institution, and when I was researching about about Indigenous culture, I started learning about wampum belts. So I started learning more and more about wampum belts, and I use wampum belts in writing on stone and concepts such as like Wahagutawin or Midapumataswin in my presentations, and also too, like I also work in the library as an Indigenous Initiatives Liaison Lead. Through networking, I was able to create, my networks were able to create positions for me in their departments, and I was able to influence the library to commission some wampum belts for the institution. So that's some of the work that I've been doing there, and I've been tying it a lot to my presentations as well.
I think I work on a lot of fronts. I tend to use humor a lot in whatever I do, because I think that it is something that's necessary to keep myself alive at the same time as it really does disarm people and bring them into a conversation. But words are also important to me. But I also work with plants, plant medicine. I'm an earth worker, and I think about how those relationships, and I'm really inspired by obviously the work of like Robin Wall Kimmerer, and the way that they speak in their kind of like poetic nature as to like how I kind of try to dispel some of these myths or create our like alternative narratives around what is mostly out there. And I tend to write, so there's something I like to read from. I wrote something for the theater company on Queen Street West, and it's just a few words, and it was just talking about how when we were approaching like the National Day of Celebration of this country, that was formed as Canada, how we were reflecting. And now I kind of feel similarly, just because we're coming up to this day of National Truth and Reconciliation, and I wonder how that will be taken up. So at this moment, we stand between the sacred and the profane. We gaze in bewilderment at the Wendigo that continues to haunt us through displacing our blockades, our bodies, our land defenders, and while we unearth our relative land by land. How are we to celebrate at a time like this? And where do I place our attention when the media continues to trigger and traumatize us through the medium of unmarked graves, numbers, and nations, who all have been taken by the Canadian state? Regardless of where you are on this day and how you identify, I am asking you to consider what legacy and history you are celebrating, and I am asking you to reflect in a different way, to restory the myth of the True North.
That's great.
Hey, Marcy, for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kosi.
Another Oh, sorry.
We just have a couple more minutes. Thank you so much for being here, Jeremy and Sam. Maybe we could have you back another time too, because
Yes.
I think this
Yeah.
is great to have this amazing discussion with other folks. I mean, like Jennifer and I always have a blast on the show, but it's nice to have other people share their insights. So you have been listening to Indigenous Waves on CIUT 89.5 FM, and my name is Jenny Blackbird.
And I am Jennifer Sylvester.
And we had Jeremy Caribou and Sam Howden from X University, two awesome individuals. And so we hope to be back in studio again. We got to figure out all the logistics of we're busy, man. Like I'm in school, I'm working, and Jennifer's like Wonder Woman. So if we could split ourselves into 5 different people, I'm sure we'd get everything done. But we do anyway. So maybe we may be back next week. Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna end off the show with some DJ, as I tweeted once, and it autocorrected DJ Shrub.
Or DJ Sherbert,
Right,
one time.
DJ Schubert. That's
Yeah.
right, DJ Schubert. So yes, and humor is one of the best things. So let's keep laughing through all of the really awful stuff, but hold in our hearts some love for everybody who's dealing with all of the workshops and things this week and the extra emotional labor. So please don't ask for emotional labor. Please. Anyways, let's get some dancing going. So we'll hopefully see you next week. Hear you next week. This is Indigenous Waves on CIUT 89.5 FM.
Calling all dancers, let's put on our dancing show and boogaloo and the barbecue rhythm. It's good for you, live it up. Hey!